Now, South Africans are feeling the pinch of the current economic challenges.
Yeah, in fact, the country's tax base has been shrinking with inflation on the rise. Unemployment also continues to haunt millions of people, resulting in many needing relief through social grants. So how much is actually known about tax rights in this country? And do we know that there's an actual tax ombud that's set up to fight for these rights? Well, let's unpack some of the functions of this office for you now, as well as the contents of its latest report with Professor Thabo Legwaila, who's the acting tax ombud, who joins us now via our video link this morning. Great to have you on the program, Prof. Thanks very much indeed for your time. I imagine there's just so many issues to unpack from this report, but what really stuck out for me was these concerns, perhaps discussions around a culture of tax compliance in this country. Let me just get your take about how much that actually exists, if at all.
Thank you very much, Ayanda, and good morning to you and to your viewers. And I mean, this is a very important aspect of the revenues of the country. As you can imagine, that we have the South African Revenue Service collecting taxes from all taxpayers. And, you know, paying tax is one of those moral obligations that everybody has. It's moral and it's legal. And we ideally would like our taxpayers throughout the country to be compliant with the tax payments. However, you find that there is an imbalance of powers, and as a result, lack of knowledge of the fact that people have rights who are taxpayers. For example, when you've got the SARS collecting your revenue or your taxes, you need to have the ability to, or you need to know that you can actually object to what the SARS is doing, or you could actually request reasons for SARS to provide you with reasons as to why, for example, they would come to a different calculation as you do. So, you know, that balance is very important for taxpayers to know that they are not, whilst they've got an obligation to pay the taxes, they've got rights to clarify exactly what they need to do so that the culture of tax compliance would be easier, tax morality would increase, and we would possibly, hopefully, have happy taxpayers.
Well, sounds like an oxymoron. I don't think that necessarily exists. However, I think if people had a feeling that their tax money is being used the way it should, one gets the sense that a whole lot more people would be willing to pay tax. I think, in fact, most people who are in right standing in society believe in paying tax because of the ways through which it sometimes is able to deal with social ills. How much of some of those issues do you have to deal with as the tax ombud, especially because typically they feed into so many other sectors of society?
Yeah, very important point there, Ian, because, you know, there are very many facets to tax and tax payment and the morality of tax payment. So there is an issue about whether the taxes are used correctly, which is an issue that needs to be dealt with government at a policy level and expenditure level. And, you know, we talked about corruption, proper usage of taxpayers' monies, etc. That's one aspect of it. There's another aspect, which is understanding the actual tax calculations, which is something that is done by taxpayers, SARS, and their tax advisors. And then the third level is where we come in, where we look at whether the SARS uses the right procedures, whether they follow the laws. You know, SARS and us are creator of statute. So what we do and what they do, what the SARS does, needs to be done in terms of the law. And what we do as well is in respect of our mandate. Our mandate is limited. It's limited to administrative service and procedural matters. So, for example, we come in when, I'll just give you an example of a third-party appointment where a taxpayer does not pay their taxes. SARS contacts them over and over again, demanding that they pay those taxes, and they continue not to pay. SARS has powers to actually deduct or instruct your bank to actually deduct money from your account. What we do is, if SARS does not follow the right procedures there, we are able to go back to them and say, you need to refund that taxpayer and go back and start the procedure afresh and follow each and every step. So whilst all those issues that you mentioned are very important, our role in the tax system, in the entire tax administration system, is to ensure that the right procedures are followed so that taxpayers are not treated unfairly in respect of the procedures that are applied in collecting the taxes.
Sure. Do you reckon you've got enough resources to be able to address all of the concerns, at least those that make it to your office? Because the sense I'm also getting is that not many South Africans actually know that there is this option, if at all they feel aggrieved by how SARS is going about collecting their taxes.
Yeah, absolutely. So we, resource-wise, I mean, our mandate is clear, and resource-wise, we are sufficiently resourced to actually assist taxpayers in this regard. And it's platforms like this that are very important, to make sure that the taxpayers know about us. But beyond knowing about us, one of our success stories is that for many years consecutively, I mean, like ever since I joined the office of the Tax Ombud, we have had a success rate of about 98% of our recommendations where SARS and the taxpayer disagree about how things have been done. SARS has implemented 98% of the recommendations that we have made to them. That basically goes to show you how much impact we have on the SARS, and how much, you asked me about, do we have enough resources and powers, and how much power we have over that. Resources to investigate, resources to recommend, and also when SARS does not implement our recommendations, they are obliged to actually report back to us as to why do they not implement those recommendations. And, I mean, we don't have much of that, as you can imagine. As I say, only 2% of them, we get those reasons. And sometimes, those reasons clarify something that would not have been clarified in the investigation stage. So that is quite impactful. I hope you would agree with me.
Yeah, no, I do. But I also am wondering how you're measuring your success as an office. Some people might consider the success being how many people, for instance, come forward with some complaints. Success may be measured according to whether or not you're able to resolve some of those issues. So, I mean, from your vantage point, if you were to take stock, for instance, of the 9 years of this office's existence, how would you say your success looks like, or what would you say your success looks like?
Yeah. Thanks. Most importantly, I mean, I could give you numbers from the 9 years, but that will be overwhelming. And so let me just limit it to the numbers that we contain in our recent annual report for the year ending this year. That we have received about 17,000 contacts from taxpayers, of which 13,000 and about 200 were queries as to, how do I deal with this? Is this correct? Is this wrong? Can you assist me with that? And then we had about 4,000 complaints. So 4,000 complaints are those where the taxpayer really has already determined that something has not been done right and they would like to complain to us. We resolved, we have accepted more than half of those. Some of them, those that we rejected because maybe they are not within our mandate, or the taxpayer themselves did not follow the right processes. But then we resolved positively more than half of that. So you can imagine that, our tax pool, the number of people in South Africa that pay tax is not too many in relation to the population. And for us to receive more than 17,000 contacts in just 9 years in our 9th year, it kind of like goes to show that there has been quite a good amount of reach, and that we impact quite a lot of people. Not only that, we also have the ability to investigate issues that we say are systemic, where there is a system issue which affect a lot of taxpayers, some of whom may not even know that they are negatively affected. So we resolve those either because we would have received a complaint or we would have identified it ourselves. So we correct it at the SARS level. It helps SARS so that they also don't receive a lot of complaints from the taxpayers. It helps our taxpayers so that they just don't go through such a systemic a problem that would affect them. Like I say, it's painful when you are affected by a system that is not working well for you, whether you know or you don't. So when we resolve those, we know that our reach is quite big and immeasurable.
Sure. Speaking about the reach of that impact, I wonder, let me point the scenario as I phrase my question. Say you've got a person who comes to you who points out a flaw in the tax system. You find that the person's concern is in fact valid. But in that investigation, you also realize that there are several other people who may very well have not been aware that they've been adversely affected by this flaw. Is SARS compelled to address those other people's concerns too because of what you found from one complaint? In other words, should people be getting refunds unexpectedly if they happen to have been adversely affected by the way SARS works without even knowing?
Yes. So the most important thing about systemic issues, such systemic issues, is that, as I said, it affects a lot of people, and some people may not know. And when we recommend to SARS to correct that, they correct it for the benefit of all taxpayers. Let's say, for example, SARS, due to some system issues, there's delays, for example, in refunds, or there is delays in finalizing certain matters, or there's delays in issuing tax clearance certificates. You would understand the impact of a tax clearance certificate. If there are those delays and a taxpayer brings it to our attention and we find that there are other people that could be affected, we actually get the SARS to correct that for the benefit of everybody. It would be a total system revamp to ensure that that problem does not exist, does not affect people who know that it affects them, and it does not affect people that don't know that it would affect them. I mean, like, you can imagine that some taxpayers don't even know that SARS needs to respond to you within a certain period. When those that know come to us, we correct that for the benefit of even those that don't know.
Sure. Informative stuff. Thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. I imagine there's a whole lot more to be said, but hopefully this is the first of many other similar engagements, especially as we approach tax season, so to speak. But for now, really do appreciate your time. Professor Thabo Legwaila is the acting Tax Ombud, joining us there as the office marks 9 years of existence this month.